Hello and welcome. My name is Michael Lahr. I'm Program Director of Elysium-Between Two continents. And today it's my great pleasure to guide you through this exhibition, the Political Theater in Exile, ΕΡΒΙΝ Piskator and Maria Ley Piskator, here at the Exil Arte Zentrum in Vienna at the University for Music and Performing Arts. ΕΡΒΙΝ Piskator, along with Max Reinhardt and Bert Brecht, probably was one of the most influential and most important theater people of the 20th century. Unfortunately, he is almost forgotten today, and this is what this exhibition wants somehow to compensate and to bring to life again the legacy of ΕΡΒΙΝ Piskator. ΕΡΒΙΝ Piskator was born in 1893 in a little town in the Westerwald region of Germany. He spent his childhood years in Marburg on the Lahn River. The first image shows him as a young boy in 1905, and below it shows the home of his parents. His father was had a shop there, and some of his relatives, some of his ancestors were pastors in the Protestant church in Germany. When the First World War started, Piskator was very soon drafted and in 1915 joined the army on the Western Front in Flanders and spent the rest of the war years until 1918 at the front and firsthand witnessed the atrocities and the horror of the warfare, especially on the Western Front. This changed him totally and dramatically, and from that moment on he decided that with his art, with his theater, he wanted to react to that and he wanted to help create a better, a more just, a more peaceful world. So the experience of the First World War really is what shaped Piskator's artistic view throughout his life. The second plate here shows him as a soldier in Gera, where he had his first training, and then shows other images of people marching in the streets and people cheering the soldiers that went into the war. When the war was over in 1918, Piskator was very disappointed about the whole event and decided to go to Berlin, where really at that point the center of artistic life was in Germany, theater, art, music-wise. He joined for a brief moment a Dada group, and this plate shows him in the background witnessing a Dada event. Dada, the famous group that really tried to revolt against the bourgeois concept of art, and this is what Piskator had in mind too. He founded the Proletarian Theater in Berlin, and that soon was forbidden by the police officer of Berlin. He joined various other theaters, and in 1927 opened his first own theater, the so-called Piskator Bühne at Nollendorfplatz. And the first production he did there was Ernst Toller's Hoppla, We Are Alive, which we see here with Alexander Granach playing the major part. This is one of the productions that showed him as the technical innovator that he also was and that he was famous for. He basically created a multi-level stage where the action that was described in the plot basically was visualized through the stage imagery. Piskator immediately also wanted to train his actors and wanted them to be part of a group and create a collective experience. So from the very beginning, the training and the creation of a school was an important part of Piskator's approach to the theater. This is what we see here, part of the morning exercises that included bodily exercises, but also mental and many other training units. 1927 was a very important year for ΕΡΒΙΝ Piskator. Not only did he do Toller's Hoppla, We Are Alive at his newly opened Piskatorbühne at Nollendorfplatz, but another important production, The Adventures of the Good Soldier Schweik. For his play, The Adventures of the Good Soldier Schweik, Piskator decided to use conveyor belts for the very first time. On one of the conveyor belts, the actor Max Pallenberg, as the good soldier Schweik, was moving towards the front line and never really arriving there, while on another conveyor belt that was moving in the opposite direction, all kinds of props were passing by that visualized the landscape the good soldier Schweik was wandering through. Berlin was one of the major towns and centers of activity for Piskator. Of course, in the 1920s, during the Weimar Republic, he really helped to write theater history there. Then after he returned from exile in 1951 from the United States, he had to go and guest direct at a number of small provincial and bigger theaters until in 1963 he was offered the artistic directorship of the Freie Volksbühne in Berlin-West. And in those last years, from 1963 until his death in 1966, he created what we now call the documentary theater. And one of the major productions was the world premiere of Rolf Hochhuth's The Deputy, a play that deals with the silence of the Pope and of the Vatican and of the Catholic Church vis-à-vis the Holocaust. Everybody wanted to prohibit this play from being put on stage. The Vatican, of course, was working behind the scenes, using all tricks to prevent this play from opening, and also major lobby groups within Germany. Willy Brandt, who was then the governing mayor of Berlin, ordered police protection for the rehearsals, and when the play opened on the stage, the effect was dramatic. The audience was really shocked and silent, and all the critics who reviewed the play were so amazed, and the play was then produced in many, many other theaters in Germany and outside Germany, and helped start a debate about the guilt of the ordinary German citizen in the Holocaust, that then led to the revolt of the students in 1968 and really shaped the public debate in Germany for years to come. In 1931, Piskator moved to the Soviet Union. He was invited by the film company Meshra Pom to direct a film. He created the movie adaptation of Anna Seker's novella, The Revolt of the Fishermen. This is a story and a film about the revolt of fishermen against the monopoly, and as such it's basically a symbol of the rise of fascism and a small group fighting the fascistic movement growing in the background. Piskator wanted to direct and realize this film also to warn the public in Europe against the threat of fascism, against the rise of National Socialism. He wanted, for that reason, to create two versions of the film, one in German and one in Russian. At the same time, he worked with German actors who, during the theater break in the summer, came to the Soviet Union to film with him. But there were so many problems while shooting the film. At one point, the set in the movie studio burned down. At another point, the set for some of the outside scenes on the shores of in Odessa was destroyed by a thunderstorm. And so the whole creation of the film took much longer than anticipated. And when the film was finally ready in 1934, Hitler was already in power. And in Piskator's eyes, the film had lost its meaning. Piskator himself became a target of the so-called purge in the Soviet Union by Stalin. He fell out of favor from Stalin and eventually was warned not to return to the Soviet Union after he had attended a conference in Paris, because otherwise he himself would be put on trial and probably would have been shot, as so many other of his colleagues that came as enthusiasts and as idealists from Germany and ended in the death camps in the Soviet Union. When Piskator returned from a conference in Paris in 1936, he stopped in Salzburg. At that time, he couldn't go to Germany because Hitler was already in power and the Nazi regime firmly established. He sought help from Max Reinhardt, but Reinhardt told him that he probably would have to emigrate soon as well. He couldn't at that time operate the theaters he had in Berlin. He was confined basically to Vienna and Salzburg. And in Salzburg, Piskator met his future wife, his second wife, Maria Lahr. Maria Lahr was a dancer and choreographer and worked with Max Reinhardt in several of his productions, amongst them The Midsummer Night's Dream and also Der eingebildete Kranke by Molière, that took place in 1923 at the park in Schloss Leopoldskron. They were married in Neuilly-sur-Seine outside of Paris. Bertolt Brecht was one of the best men when they married, and from there eventually they emigrated to the United States. Piskator and Maria married, as I said, in Neuilly-sur-Seine. Bertolt Brecht was their best man. At the same time, Piskator tried to come up with ideas and with productions and with theater activities with the limited resources he had in Paris. He imagined doing a huge festival on the battlefields of the First World War in Flanders and also in Versailles, where the peace treaty was negotiated, to really bring to life and underline the importance of peace and of peaceful cooperation within Europe against the threat of National Socialism that was taking over and threatening the existence of Europe at that time. While he was in Paris, many of his friends also had to emigrate, among them Walter Mehring, the author of The Merchant of Berlin, a play that Piskator had directed in one of his theaters in the late 1920s, and also Ernst Busch, the actor and singer that we also already saw earlier in the exhibition. Busch was interned in a camp, Saint-Cyprien, and writes a plea to Piskator, a letter begging him for help, either financially or with his influence, to gather and get an affidavit or a visa that would allow him to emigrate to the United States or elsewhere and find a safe haven there. Walter Mehring writes a very funny, ironic poem congratulating Piskator to his marriage to Maria Lahr. We see in the middle an image by Felix Nussbaum, the famous painter who also was in Saint-Cyprien and later vanished in the Holocaust. And this painting depicts the horror and the misery of those who were in this prison camp in France. From Paris, at the end of December 1938, Maria and Erwin go to New York. They arrived there on January 1st, 1939, and this opens a whole new chapter in the exile of Piskator. On January 1st, 1939, Erwin Piskator and Maria Lahr arrived in New York, coming from Paris. Piskator was invited by Gilbert Miller to direct his adaptation of Leo Tolstoy's War and Peace at Broadway, a project that was very dear to Piskator, but it wasn't realized because Miller had all kinds of criticism and eventually lost interest in this project. But Piskator and his wife were in the safety of the United States, And Piskator, by all means, wanted to stay in America. His visa was about to expire, and the only way, or a better chance to get a visa, was to find a position as a teacher or as a professor. Alvin Johnson, who was the director of the New School for Social Research back then, immediately saw what an opportunity he had when all these professors from Germany and Austria had to emigrate because of Hitler. And he all invited them to come to the New School, and he founded what he called the University in Exile. And overnight, basically, the New School, who was a school that was attended by students in the evening to get an additional degree, became a full-blown university with top-notch intellectuals leading the various departments. Piskator was invited by Alvin Johnson to run the theater department, and he founded what then was called the Dramatic Workshop, a school where he basically taught his idea of theater, a theater that was a school and a school that became a theater, where he trained actors for Broadway and for other theater institutions. But he, of course, brought his idea of a politically relevant and socially engaged theater to America. And this is probably one of the major merits of Piskator, that he created a theater that was socially conscious and socially relevant at a time when only Broadway and only commercial theater existed in America. When we go through this exhibition, especially in America, we meet again a number of friends that Piskator had had and colleagues from his Berlin years from the Weimar Republic that, like him, emigrated to America and found exile there. One of them is Ernst Toller, the author of his play, Hoppla, we are alive, that Piskator directed in 1927. He already in 1936 had admonished Piskator to learn English because he thought he would have a big chance to succeed in America. Unfortunately, Toller committed suicide in 1931, and we have a letter here by Piskator to his friend Hans Saal, describing in great detail this suicide in the Hotel Mayflower that really shocked the entire community of exiles in New York. One of the big merits of Piskator's dramatic workshop was that he basically trained an entire generation of actors, directors, playwrights that later on became quite famous. I just mentioned a few names: Tennessee Williams, who attended his workshop. Later on, when the war was over, Marlon Brando, Harry Belafonte, Tony Curtis. I could go on with the list that includes people like Elaine Stritch, Judith Malina, Tony Randall, and many others. And this is really the legacy of Piskator from his years in America, that he influenced and shaped this generation that then would go on wherever they went, to Hollywood, to regional theaters as playwrights, to work in the tradition of Piskator as politically and socially conscious artists. When McCarthy came to create the Committee for Un-American Activities in 1950-51, Piskator was one of the artists who also got an invitation to appear in front of this committee. And Piskator didn't want to appear there. He didn't want to testify against his colleagues, and he didn't want to participate in this communist witch hunt, and decided, when he got the invitation to appear, which was on a Friday, to immediately buy a plane ticket, boarded a plane on Sunday evening, and returned in 1951 in October to Germany. When Piskator had returned to Germany in 1951, he came to a Germany that was in the middle of rebuilding, a Germany that was about to be separated into East and West. The GDR had just been established, and Piskator really had a hard time finding an artistic home in all those years. And eventually in 1963 was offered to become the artistic director of the Freie Volksbühne, the Free People's Stage in Berlin West. We already saw one of the productions that he world premiered there, The Deputy by Rolf Huchut. In the same vein, he did 3 more productions that were world premieres. One was The Investigation, a play by Peter Weiss that dealt with the Frankfurt Auschwitz trials. Another play was In the Case of J. Robert Oppenheimer by Heiner Kipphardt. And the third and last play was The Revolt of the Officers, a play that dealt with the attempt to assassinate Hitler, to kill Hitler on July 20th, 1944 by the group surrounding Stauffenberg. When this play was finished and had opened, Piskator went to a spa in southern Germany and died there shortly thereafter, much too early in 1966. But he left a legacy that is very important to remember and that really can teach us today a great deal. The importance of a politically engaged, socially relevant theater. And this exhibition is part of an effort really to help keep alive the legacy of Piskator and translate it into the 21st century. In order not to forget the legacy of Piskator and his achievements, Grigori von Letis, artistic director of Elysium, founded the ΕΡΒΙΝ Piskator Award in 1985. This award has been given to artists who work in the vein of Piskator since then, and when we, Elysium, turned 30 a few years ago, we decided to publish a book documenting the history of the Piskator Award that is available in English and German. Just at the beginning of this year, I came up with another book that goes a little bit deeper, interviews with some of the Piskator Award recipients, Thomas Hampson, Kurt Masur, Ellen Burstyn, and others. And I asked them what their take is on Piskator, on political theater, on the interconnection between politics and the arts in general, and how they see their role in this. This book just came out at the beginning of this year, again in English and German. And if you are interested to further delve into Piskator and his achievements, feel free to get this book. Thank you very much.